name's Melissa Coppola, and I'm an assistant here at the School of Music, Theater, and Dance EXCEL program. Today I'm here with guest speaker Matthew Deere, who just finished teaching a 7-week mini course in the music industry. He is a co-founder of Ghostly International and Spectral Sound, and is a DJ, experimental pop artist, and music producer. Welcome, Matthew.
Yeah, hi. Good to be here.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks for the nice intro.
For sure.
Yeah.
So why don't you take us back to the start of your career? We'd love to hear a little bit how you got started, how you launched your project.
Mm-hmm.
Was it based on seizing opportunities that already existed, or was it more focused on creating your own opportunities?
Yeah, those are all really good questions, many of which you don't really know the answers to until much later. And I don't know if I know them now, but in retrospect, I think the best way to sum it up was I was a young kid, very eager and excited to just make any kind of music and tinker with sound, tinker with machines. I remember a little side story. I think I was 8 years old, and I think one of my first records I bought was like a Tone Loc record or something, you know, like a little 45 hip-hop record. And there was a sound in that I think now I realize was a shaker or a cabasa or whatever. And I found this little mechanical pencil lead container on my mom's desk, and I started shaking it. And I told her, I remember specifically saying, this is the thing they used for that sound in the Tone Loc record. My mom's like, what? And I'm like, this is it. Like, it sounds just like it. And I think in my mind, I honestly thought, and I just remember the story recently because my daughter did something very similar. And I told my wife, I'm like, I think I did that. So when I shook it, I really thought that I found the thing that made the sound in the record. And looking back, it's like, oh, wow. Like, I was obsessed about studio productions and sound without really even knowing that that's what I was getting into. So I think from an early age, I just showed signs of, like, this is what I'm going to do. Like,
so just focusing in on your fascination with sound.
I just really liked sound. And, you know, whether it was certain weird things on the radio, like Herbie Hancock's Rocket was always a big standout for me around that age. And then the video was also equally strange. Just this weird, like, what is this world? Like, I want to be a part of that world. I want to make music in that world. So little things like that were the very early triggers. I think that kept me going towards this mysterious world of music. But the factual things, that the more hardcore moments were, my father was a musician who kind of always had some pieces of equipment laying around. He gave me my first little drum machine, like a Boss accompaniment, like a little MIDI sequencer drum machine. Yeah, just like a little Guitar Center toss-off item that, you know, you can see at a garage sale like a year later.
But they're so fun.
But they were fun, and it gave me the idea of MIDI and programming and sequencing, and it showed me that you can layer. I think it had 4 tracks. You could do like a synthetic bass, piano, and drums or something. So I think early on then, I must have been like 12 or 13 playing with that. I just knew that you could lay out songs that weren't necessarily with a band. Like I was learning about arrangement at that point. And yeah, so it was always just this cool, kind of just like try things out, see what works mentality, whether it was with the drum machine, with a little 4-track tape machine, me rudimentary guitar through my dad's guitars. And then kind of the big electronic boom of the 90s hit. MTV was flooded with artists from Europe and the UK, like Chemical Brothers, Daft Punk, Fatboy Slim, and I was just going to University of Michigan at that point. I was a freshman. So I was very excited to get into this world of, like, this takes a lot of the things I liked about the Beastie Boys, but now there's no words, and it's just instrumental. And this is that stuff that I liked about Herbie Hancock's Rocket and my brother's new wave industrial records that were a bit more, you know, electronic dance. So I think it all started kind of like coalescing and making sense at that point, that, there's a world of this music happening in places like Detroit, you know, 45 miles away. And then I started going to some parties there and saw the DJ culture, and just immediately realized, this is what I have, all these machines. At that point I had a sampler, a keyboard. I can make that kind of music, you know. I can make dance music, I can make electronic music outright. And then flash forward a year here, my sophomore year, I met Sam Valenti, who had this great idea to start the label Ghostly International. And I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but that's kind of like how it all happened. Just me playing around with sound, playing around with computers and weird software that came with your computers when I was a high school, a kid, and then just always pursuing that passion and seeing where I could push it. Yeah.
That's wonderful. So it seems like you do so many different things with starting a music label and being a live performer and kind of traversing the two. Can you give us a snapshot of what your current career looks like? What does a week in the life of Matthew Deere look like?
Oh, yeah. Well, as you mentioned in the intro, luckily and sadly, I just finished my Arts and Admin 532-432 course on the recording industry that I was so happy to receive the offer and invitation to take over for this year. And when it went like that, and when I was collecting the final exam on Monday, I really did. I was like, I'm sad. Like, oh my gosh, this is over. Like,
I'll have to bring you back then.
Like, I feel like it just happened, so that took up a lot of my weekly activities recently, which is a really nice addition. Aside from that, DJing, I still DJ quite a bit. I'm working on a new album, a new live show, which will be out imminently. And that involves me kind of rehearsing, laying out songs in my studio that I'll then transfer to the live environment, and flying around the world, DJing, playing live. I just played in LA for KCRW, had a big masquerade ball, and I was kind of the live guest there. I'll be at WNYC in New York at the end of the month, so I'm doing my awesome radio station tour, I guess.
Nice. Yeah, that's great.
And then, I'll just put on an album tour all next year. And
lots of traveling.
Remixes, traveling, family time.
That sounds really fun.
It's just a mix, yeah. I try to keep a balance of it all and not do one thing too much, and always be home for breakfast with my daughters.
That's important.
When I can.
Yes. So backing up a little bit to when you mentioned Ghostly, curious to hear a little bit more about the start of Ghostly. When you came in as a co-founder, what sorts of skills were you bringing to the table, and what sorts of skills were your colleagues bringing that were complementing your own?
Yeah, I mean, the label ultimately in the very beginning was just Sam Valenti, also a student here. He was a freshman, and he was a DJ at the time. Was very, very motivated, very very strong-willed to do this vision, this idea, this label. So the label idea, the name, the look, the image, the scope was completely Sam's vision. And I think when he met me that year before he started the label, and he met me, and then we met the next week, shared music, talked about it, I think he realized, here's a very good cornerstone of that idea. Like, I have an artist now that I can kind of get music from and bounce ideas off of, and just a friend. Like, we realized right away that we clicked, personality-wise. So in that sense, I think I brought to the label a creative energy. Like, he saw me kind of making music nonstop and being in my apartment just working on songs every day. And Sam was also producing a bit, but I think he was more focused on DJing and also just label brand identity and building. So, did I bring any accounting skills to the label? No. Did I know how to get like a record distributed and put into shops? No. I mean, I learned that through time, but I wasn't bringing anything, any sort of economic know-how, or structure to that, aside from creativity. And then slowly we met artists like Ted Mullinex, Midwest Product, Dyke House, a bunch of local guys, Todd Osborne, that were also doing very similar things musically. And I think quickly the roster grew way beyond what just I was bringing. But I always maintained a very close relationship with Sam. And I did end up working in the label as a distribution agent, selling my own records to local shops, pretending to be somebody else. So we had a PO net 60 on 40 copies of Hands Up for Detroit. Trying to act like the guy that's like, pay me the money, but thanks for buying my record.
It's okay. Yeah, you do what you gotta do.
Back then it was just everybody trying to figure it out as we did it. Am I involved in the label from a business standpoint? No. I mean, yes, my heart is very much involved in it, and my music is very much attached to the business side of it, but Sam and I are just very good friends, lifelong friends, and
That's great.
I still have a home for my music.
It sounds like you guys had a great synergy.
We did, yeah. We
That's
did.
Wonderful.
We still do.
So kind of focusing in on what you were mentioning about the music industry, curious to hear a little bit more about how the music industry has changed over the years and what are those key changes.
Yeah, I mean, it's like almost like every minute it seems like it changes now.
It's evolving very quickly.
Yeah,
It seems.
it's almost like Bitcoin lately. I've been watching like Bitcoin numbers go up and down.
Yes.
I'm like, this is a lot like the music industry these days. It's just, you never know when something's going to be all in on one thing and then everybody pulls back, either with the genre or an artist. But just talking to my management too recently, artists that you thought were so established 5 years ago, you know, now there can be a total tidal shift in energy or style. And things that were once rock solid are no longer relevant. And it goes beyond, like in the past, you know, when we were younger, at least for me, you could take an artist like Shaggy, for example, which was, you know, all of a sudden huge, like blew up on MTV. And it's kind of like a reggae, westernized reggae, or not westernized, but Americanized reggae pop. And then it kind of fell off after a year or two. But you could easily see the lines of kind of like demarcation where it was like, okay, this was cool and now it's not cool. Whereas now there's not, you can't even really see this trending shifts. It's just certain artists are in and then they're not. And it doesn't matter if it's completely funded by a major label or completely grassroots. I think really it's just what the people want to hear and what they're listening to. And all the middle stuff really doesn't have much say in it. I was just reading an article about Khaled's new guy from El Paso, young, and his album just went, I think, platinum. And he went from being on SoundCloud, kind of streaming 3 years ago, to now having a platinum album from El Paso. And somebody was kind of saying, oh, it's an industry plant. You know, there was like some Twitter like beef. And he's just like, I just work hard. And then the guy from Apple Music, the head of Apple Music, says, look, I mean, I can pick people. Because he helped, you know, push this artist to the front. But he's like, I've picked many artists that I think were worthy of being top of Apple Music's playlists. And so that it just doesn't resonate. They don't resonate with people. And then those numbers just immediately fall back down. And the people don't pick that artist up and carry it to the next level. Whereas somebody like Khaled, it just resonated and his numbers kept rising and now he's at a platinum selling album. So I think it just goes to show that even if you do have major backing like Apple Music saying this is it, this is what you should listen to, it doesn't always mean that that's going to be set, you know? So that's what the industry kind of represents to me. There's really just absolutely no formula. There's never been, I mean, there's always been some sort of formula, you know, whether it was how do you groom a Fleetwood Mac or how do you, you know, why does Bob Dylan speak to people? But in the end, I really just think it's the music that will always kind of cut through and tell people what's popular. I'm way more in the more kind of cerebral headspace now. But if you go back down to what's changed, digital music, streaming services, the availability of artists' personalities and immediate connections between communication. You know, being able to just like go onto their Twitter accounts and tweet at an artist and get an immediate response. I think you just have way more FaceTime with your artists, which works. You know, it's more personal. But again, maybe like friends or like people you kind of get sick of too quickly, you might pull back. So things are just very quick. They change very fast.
So how do you take the knowledge that you've acquired over the years and the changes that you've seen, and how does that impact your own music making and your own performance?
It's tough. Part of you wants to totally ignore anything like that when it comes to making music. You definitely don't want to be trying to predict any certain trends, or you don't want to make your music expecting it to be in a certain group, because when you're making it, that trend group is already like way over here. By the time it comes out, even if you put it on Spotify or SoundCloud the next day, it's going to seem irrelevant to whatever you were aiming for. So in that sense, I very much try to separate the creative mind from the business strategy mind. But to ignore it completely is rather foolish as well. So I think for me, I just try to I try to listen to new music. I try to keep my mind open to new artists. And not saying I'm going to like them so much, but some artists I really do like. I think a great song is a great song, whether it's written by Drake or Bob Dylan or Drake's team. There's always something in a great song that just resonates, and it could be so simple, so pure. You're just like, ooh, like there's something there that I can tell why it's a hit. So I'm always listening to that stuff. I guess just like the kid, 8-year-old kid, analyzing music. I that's the key. I think it's never giving up on that little magical, ooh, like the big question mark.
Yes, the childlike fascination with what you love.
So that's mainly it. Just hang on to that and try to listen to that as often as possible.
Great.
And keep that in the studio as well.
Yeah. So my next question was going to be how or what sorts of simple tips would you suggest for any aspiring musicians or maybe electronic music artists? Yeah. It sounds like part of that was childlike fascination, keeping that fascination, but maybe what are some like active tips that you can offer?
Yeah, definitely that. But something I've always done is I try to make kind of the same way. Like I try to make all styles of music because I like most people, we love all styles of music. I remember early on in my career, it was very, very like, well, you're a techno guy. You make techno music. It's like, well, yeah, but I play guitar and I grew up in Texas and I like singer-songwriter music. And that was the beauty of working with somebody like Sam because he understood that. Whereas other people might have been like, oh no, like, you should stop doing that right now. Like, put down the guitar, you're a techno DJ. Whereas now it's obvious that there's so many different, like there's EDM artists working with country music singers and there's really no lines of separation as long as the music's good. So my advice to younger artists is don't focus on one genre so much, like definitely focus on what you love and what your strong suits are. But I always tried to make hip hop music, even though I was never, going to release it. Or I always tried to make like some progressive trance music as an electronic artist, even though I knew I wasn't a progressive trance DJ, but I wanted to crack that code and figure out how they would put it all together. Acoustic music, I'm still, all my friends know I've threatened my acoustic album like every year for the last 15 years. So,
still waiting for
one day, it's like one day I'll do that. But it's I Travis Pick and I embodied Townsend and Steve Earle and John Prine and Bob Dylan and like those are some of my heroes. But will I release that music? Probably not until the song is good enough, But at least I'm trying. And when I try to crack those codes, I think I'll learn things that I can take from there and put in my other music that does come out.
Yeah.
So that would be my advice, is always kind of open your mind to other styles of music. You're going to learn something, whether it be a production tip or a songwriting tip. And you'll be like, oh, like, I never knew like that's how they did it. And, when they're making like hip hop beats, like, that's how they got that one sound. Or that's how they did that. Well, I can use that over here now. So, yeah.
I think that's awesome advice.
Yeah,
Thank you
cool.
so much.
Sweet.
So where can people find out more about your upcoming release or maybe more information about your projects?
Ghostly.com /me, Matthew Deere, is always a good spot to look for kind of the most up-to-date. My Facebook page is relatively up to speed, so long as I keep all my passwords and links from other programs up to speed. Instagram is a fun place to check in on me because I'm always posting from the studio and my family, my house, and Twitter. So
all right, wonderful.
Stop on by any of those places.
Okay.
I'll be there.
Well, we'll include links to those in the closing. Thank you so much for watching today and have a wonderful day.